начинается!
Greetings, folks. Anila Horm here with a World of Warships replay. This is Lynn Wilkie in the Tier 10 Soviet destroyer, the Khabarovsk. And if you're thinking you've seen this player in this ship on this channel before, you are not mistaken. We have featured Lynn a few times in the Khabarovsk. He is in a domination match on Hotspot, and with relatively few destroyers on each team, this is going to influence how Lynn plays his ship today. As far as ship upgrades and commander skills, Lynn is all about the guns, including the use of IFHE. He is an ardent believer in that skill for the Soviet destroyers. He's also making no attempt to improve his concealment beyond the camouflage, and he has mounted the unique upgrade for the Khabarovsk. You'll also notice that he took the expert marksman skill, and while this is not normally needed on the Khabarovsk, it does offset the chief penalty of the unique upgrade, which is poorer turret traverse. So Lynn knows that capping wins, and the Khabarovsk, even though it has terrible concealment for a ship classified as a destroyer, he has fortunately spawned on the east side of Hotspot, and there's lots of cover in the Charlie cap to allow a ship like the Khabarovsk to be able to contest the cap successfully. Now, this is not going to be his highest damage game in the ship. He is going to do a considerable amount of damage, but he's going to be putting a lot of focus on being able to contest and support the caps, again, because there are relatively few destroyers on his team. If you do want to see a high damage match or a much higher damage match in the ship from Lynn, you should watch the Burning Ships to the Waterline video on this same channel, and I'll include a link to that match or to that replay in the description below. So, like I said, Lynn has come here to the Charlie cap to contest, and with all the island cover, he's able to do this quite safely. The cap is being contested now. We can see a smoke screen going up just on the northeast side of Charlie, but that is not obviously the location of the contesting ship, since that smoke screen is actually outside the cap. Lynn's going to try to take some pot shots here, and he's going to send torpedoes out. The Khabarovsk, in its series of nerfs that it's received over the last year and a half, one of them is that it has much shorter torpedo range, only 6 kilometers. So those are more just for area denial. Here he gets a view on the opposing Jutland, but the firing angles here aren't very good for him to be able to attack the destroyer. There is an allied Grosser Kurfürst that has moved into Charlie with Lynn here, and he's going to draw a lot of the fire. If you had noticed in chat, this Kurfürst player announced right at the beginning of the battle that he had every intention of pushing the cap hard and he wanted support. But as it turns out, frankly, this is kind of a suicide run. The channels here are very narrow. That makes a large battleship or any battleship a prime target for torpedo strikes and torpedo ambushes. The one upside of the Kurfürst being here with his hydro is that he has detected the opposing Cossack, which is in the cap. And the Kurfürst, you can see, has already lost 2/3 of his health. He's burning in at least 2 places. He's not going to last too much longer. But again, the only silver lining here is that he's at least detected the opposing Cossack. And unfortunately, Lynn is unable to put any fire on him because the island separating him from the destroyer. The Cossack is going to start moving out here, and then Lynn is going to be able to start putting fire on the ship. Looks like he got cut up on the island a little bit. First round mostly impacted the island, but the next few rounds he's going to be able to get in on the ship okay. And the allied Kurfürst is just about to go down. He just has a few hundred hit points left. So that was a interesting choice to make. Yes, you want your battleships to push flanks, but having battleships simply go in alone and attempting to suicide is not an effective way to push a flank. You need to be supported, and this is why teams need to be coordinated. Now, the upside here is that the Cossack has been driven out to the cap and Lin is able to be working the cap right now. There is an opposing ship here on the east side of the Charlie cap. It's a Des Moines. And so Lin is going to hold his fire here as much as he'd like to shoot that cruiser, just so that he can lock down the cap and help build some point base for his team. The Allied team is down one ship, but they did successfully secure Alpha, and you can see the Allied Chongmu is actually moving to the northeast towards Bravo to contest the cap there. Lin has now just secured the cap right before the opposing fire came in. There was the radar from the Des Moines, but he's now able to get out of range and is able to get out of the cap. Now the the opposing team now needs to do some extra work to try to take that cap back now that Lin has secured it. Lin is going to move more to the west side of the map. Our team is lemmied here. To the west side, you can see there's a large group of ships sort of impacted on the south and southwest side of Alpha. That's not really helping them here. Lin's just putting in some ranged fire here, but he is going to need to turn away to avoid being the focus of the Des Moines that is coming down the east side of the map. It looks like the opposing Cossack has moved back into Delta to start challenging that cap. Lin, as much as he wants to go back in and find the Cossack and finish him off, he simply doesn't have the support. All of the Allied team is at Alpha. There's a few lingering around in Charlie, and the Chongmu is now just about to secure Bravo, and there he is, just secured the cap. So the Allied team has a significant cap advantage, but they're down by 2 ships. And as successful as a Khabarovsk player can be, and he can avoid taking shots by going very fast, Lin is simply outnumbered at the Delta cap, and there's no sense in having him throw his ship away as well, just to try to get some damage in on those ships at Delta. So he's going to have to abandon this cap. Putting some range fire here on an opposing Musashi. The Allied team, or the opposing team, had started contesting Alpha, and I believe that's at Edinburgh, opposing Edinburgh in the cap. Then sending some area denying torps here back towards that center channel on the west side of Delta, so that if any opposing ships are trying to come through that channel, may run into those torpedoes. The Allied team has successfully challenged the opposing ship that was in Alpha and has taken them out, so we keep Alpha locked down. The opposing team has moved back into Bravo and is starting to take that cap back. The Lin's getting some cap resets here. And there the opposing Conqueror was actually just taken out, which is very good. So this Allied Chongmu, quite brave in his attempt to sort of drive a wedge by pushing north towards the cap. He was able to get a few strikes in on some of the opposing ships that had pushed back or are being pushed back to Bravo at this point to try to retake that cap. And I believe that Chongmu is going to sink at least one more ship. Lin is within about 11 kilometers of an opposing Minotaur, and a Minotaur can disassemble a Khabarovsk pretty quickly if he's very close range. But at that range, the shell arcs of the Minotaur are so floaty that trying to hit a ship as fast as the Khabarovsk at that range is usually extremely difficult. So long as Lin keeps his distance, he should be okay. Again, he's putting some fire on the opposing Des Moines that turned around and has headed back towards Bravo. Now, there is an opposing Alabama here that has moved into Bravo. We don't know where the opposing Cossack is at this point, but we know that the Cossack is very low health and would only take a salvo or two for Lin to finish him off. But what's interesting here is that this opposing Alabama has elected to basically isolate himself by going into the Delta cap. And again, this is a very difficult cap for larger capital ships to be in if there is opposition around, because it makes them very vulnerable to torpedo strikes. They can be ambushed quite easily, and they have relatively little maneuvering options because of all the close proximity of the islands. So Lin is taking advantage of the fact that this Alabama player has isolated himself. Now, curiously, Lin is located, and he initially, I think he was thinking it was the Cossack that was locating him. But is it going to turn out it's actually this Alabama? And why this Alabama chose to come towards Lin in such close proximity with radio location skill, we just don't understand. But basically, the Alabama is now doomed. He didn't have his guns turned towards Lin, and he's simply going to take all the torpedoes, and Lin's going to take him out in a devastating strike, and Lin's just now going to march right back into Delta and retake this cap for the team. So the Allied team has actually done a good job recovering from the relatively modest ship deficit that they had. They were down a couple of ships at one point. There, the opposing Cossack was rediscovered, I believe, up by the Bravo cap and has been finished off. Lin is going to work from some concealment here and finish capturing Delta. It's a double fire on the Musashi, which I assume he's going to damage control right away, but it doesn't look like he is. So Lin's going to get a second solo cap as a Khabarovsk player in a battle, which is pretty rare. Again, most Khabarovsk players tend to work from range. They use their speed as their armor, and they just are constantly firing their guns to farm damage off of opponents that would otherwise have a very difficult time hitting them at range. Now he's secured the Delta cap again, and the opposing team did reclaim Bravo, but the Allied team now has a very strong hold on 3 of the caps and have a huge point advantage at this time, even though they're only up by 1 ship. And was hoping that he'd be able to get a little more distance and then put some fire on this Musashi and try to get him on fire again. Now, this is where one of the controversies comes in around the use of IFHE, since it does decrease your fire chance by 1% on calibers below 140 millimeters. So, there's some argument to be said, and I know this has been made by a number of people, that taking IFHE on many of these lower caliber destroyer guns is not advisable because it erodes their opportunities to set fires. I'm trying to do a little more scientific research on this with some of my own Soviet ships, taking some commanders with and without IFHE, and see if it has any sort of strong basis. But in this particular case, Lin seems to have established that having IFHE doesn't seem to be too much of a hindrance, as he has now earned both Wither and Arsonist on the same ship. So he's done okay here. The Allied team here at this point is very close to wrapping up. They're only at less than a minute away from winning, provided no other ships go down on their Allied team. Lin is going to open up here on this opposing Minotaur, but the Minotaur is simply going to be one shot by an Allied Yamato, and that's going to end the cruiser's life very quickly. And so now the Allied team is only seconds away from winning. So Lin did a really nice job here. And again, this is a reflection of if you're in a Khabarovsk and you have a relatively limited number of Allied destroyers that can cap, you sometimes still need to cap anyway. So he did a really good job for his team. So great job, Lin. And we certainly hope you enjoyed the replay and commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there, and we wish you happy sailing.